I remember that day like a scar burned into memory. The sheriff's deputy was shouting over the crowd, ordering everyone off my property. And there she was, Karen, the HOA president, clutching that court order with shaking hands, her perfect smile gone. Behind her, the investors were walking away, furious. My lake, the one they'd been stealing for years, was finally mine again. But man, to get to that moment, I had to crawl through hell. 6 months earlier, I'd left Silicon Valley behind. 10 years running a cybersecurity startup had left me hollow, like a phone with 1% battery and no charger in sight. I sold the company, packed up my life, and moved to the only place that ever felt real, the old family lake house out in northern Georgia. My granddad, God rest his soul, had built that cabin back in the 50s. He'd fought off mining companies, land speculators, and God knows who else to keep that lake pure. "Water's life, son," he'd say, "not something you sell to fools with shiny shoes." I used to think that was just one of his old man sayings. Turns out, it was a warning. The first few weeks were heaven: coffee on the dock, fishing at sunrise, long, quiet afternoons fixing the porch. I could almost feel my blood pressure dropping every morning. Then, one day, I found it, a bright orange paper stuck to the side of my boat. Violation notice. Apparently, I was being fined $500 a day for keeping an unauthorized watercraft on community property. My boat, on my lake. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my coffee. At first, I thought it was some prank. Then I saw the letter in my mailbox, with the HOA's letterhead and signature, Karen Morrison, president of the Ridgeway Lakes Homeowners Association. That's when I realized it wasn't a joke. It was war. My neighbor, old Tom Reed, filled me in later that morning. Tom's a retired carpenter, leathery skin, the kind of guy who's probably made more coffee in a thermos than I've had hot meals. He shook his head when I showed him the letter. "They've been getting bolder every year," he said. "That HOA started on the North Ridge about 10 years ago. Now they act like they own every square inch that touches the water. They've even got a damn fishing club, the Ridgeway Anglers. They hold tournaments right on your shoreline." I didn't believe him until I looked it up. And there it was, right on the HOA website. Dozens of photos of smug, khaki, wearing guys showing off their catch with my cabin in the background. They called it our community's crown jewel, my granddad's lake. So I called a friend, Emma Clark, an environmental lawyer I'd known since college. "They're demanding I move my boat off my lake," I told her. She laughed so hard she snorted. "Jake, that's trespassing, plain and simple. Don't you move that boat. I'll come up this weekend. We'll get your paperwork straight." That night, I walked down to the dock and looked at the water. Moonlight shimmered off it like silver glass. I could almost hear my granddad's voice again. "Don't let anyone tell you they own the water. Jake, that's God's work, not man's." By the next morning, the HOA had doubled down. Another letter, another threat. So I went to their monthly meeting. The place looked ridiculous, like someone had built a country club out of pure arrogance. I sat in the back and listened as Karen held court at the front, mid-50s, perfect blonde bob, pearls, that permanent smirk people wear when they think they run the world. She droned on about lawn heights and mailbox colors like she was the mayor of perfection. Then she brought up an unauthorized boat stored on community waters. That was my cue. I raised my hand. The room went quiet. "Excuse me," I said. "Just wondering, who owns the lake?" Karen's eyes narrowed a little, but it was her second in command, Richard, who answered. The HOA manages it on behalf of the community. I smiled. Right, but who holds the deed? That one hit home. A few folks turned around, curious. Richard stammered something about historical arrangements. Karen shot him a look that could curdle milk. I didn't press further, but I could tell they were hiding something big. After the meeting, as people were leaving, I overheard Karen whisper sharply to Richard near the coffee table. We need to deal with the Sullivan property before it's too late. Deal with me, huh? Noted. When I got home that evening, my boat was gone. Just gone. All that was left was a fresh violation notice taped to the dock, saying it had been impounded for community non-compliance. My jaw locked so tight I thought I'd break a tooth. I called the sheriff's office. They told me it was a civil matter. Civil. My ass. Someone had stolen my property. For a few hours that night, I'll admit, I thought about packing up, just walking away. I'd worked all my life to earn peace, and now this circus had followed me home. I sat on the porch in the dark, staring at the empty dock, and for a minute I wondered if maybe I was making too big a deal. Maybe I should just let them have their stupid lake. But then I saw my granddad's old photo hanging in the cabin, him holding up a giant base, smiling that stubborn grin. And I knew I couldn't. That man fought corporations with nothing but grit and a shotgun full of rock salt. I wasn't about to let a suburban committee beat me. When Emma arrived the next morning, she brought more than just coffee. She brought clarity. We spread out the old deeds, surveys, everything my dad had kept filed away. It was ironclad. I owned the lake, the water rights, and 15 feet beyond the shoreline. Every photo the HOA had posted online was proof of trespassing. And that's when Tom stopped by again, carrying something even juicier, a rumor from his niece at the county office. Jake, they're filing for a rezoning permit, he said. Plans for a luxury resort, condos, golf course, right on your lake. Everything clicked. Karen and her crew weren't just drunk on HOA power. They were planning a development deal worth millions, built on property that wasn't theirs. Emma leaned back in her chair. They're trying to establish fake authority over your lake so they can sell access to investors. You're the wrench in their plan. We decided to play it slow. Emma drafted a polite letter to the HOA requesting documentation on lake management rights. Nothing aggressive, just enough to make them squirm. That evening, Karen showed up at my door, alone this time, smiling like a snake. She complimented the cabin, called it quaint. Then she got to her point. We'd like to settle this amicably, she said, sliding a paper across the table. It was a cooperation agreement. Basically, I'd acknowledge the HOA's authority over the lake, and they'd allow me to keep my boat there. I asked. And this would cover your fishing tournament this weekend, too? She hesitated, just a blink, then smiled wider. Yes, of course. We'd love your participation. I looked her dead in the eye. And the resort project? That one broke her mask. Jake, she said quietly, you're new here. You don't understand how things work. People like you can either be part of progress or stand in the way of it. I leaned forward. Karen, my family built this place before your HOA existed. I don't do well with threats. Her eyes turned cold. Then you'll do even worse with consequences. When she left, I called Emma. She's scared, Emma said. That means we've got leverage. Saturday came, tournament day. I woke up early to the sound of engines and laughter echoing across the water. Dozens of trucks lined my shore, banners flapping in the breeze. Annual Ridgeway Anglers Championship. My land looked like a carnival, and right in the middle of it, Karen, dressed like she was hosting a TV show, shaking hands with investors, pretending this was all theirs. I watched from the trees with a pair of binoculars, while Emma filed an emergency injunction with the county court. Within 2 hours, the judge signed it, an order to cease all unauthorized activity on private property. By noon, we walked down the slope with a deputy sheriff beside us. The deputy raised his voice. "Attention, everyone. This event is taking place on private land. You're required to vacate immediately." You could have heard a pin drop. Then came the shouting. "What are you talking about? We've fished here for years, sirs. This is HOA property." Karen stormed forward, waving her arms. "This is outrageous." Emma handed her the injunction and the property deed. "Not outrageous, ma'am, lawful. This lake has belonged to the Sullivan family since 1953. You've been trespassing for years." The color drained from Karen's face. Behind her, the investors started murmuring, checking their phones, realizing the ground under their million-per-dollar project had just vanished. One of them muttered, "You told us the HOA controlled this." Karen tried to recover, babbling something about pending negotiations. That's when I stepped forward. "Negotiations?" I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You mean when you stole my boat, forged authority, and lied to your residents about owning my lake?" A resident in the crowd yelled, "Wait! We've been paying HOA fees for lake access. Where's that money been going?" The murmurs turned into outrage. People started pointing fingers. The whole scene unraveled fast, shouting, accusations, confusion. The deputy ordered everyone to start packing up. Emma and I just stood back, watching years of corruption collapse under its own weight. Karen glared at me one last time. "You'll regret this, Jake," she hissed, her voice trembling. "You think you've won, but you haven't seen what I can do." I smiled. "You've already done it, Karen, to yourself." The next morning, the story hit the local paper. HOA accused of fraud. Developer scam exposed. By noon, every regional station had picked it up. The county opened an investigation into HOA finances. Investors withdrew, and Karen resigned before the week was over. A few days later, Emma called me laughing. "Guess what? Your friend Karen was already under scrutiny in Florida. Changed her last name after a real estate fraud case. Turns out, she'd tried the same scheme before. Fake ownership claims, bogus contracts, pocketing HOA funds. This time, there was no escaping. The prosecutor charged her with fraud and misappropriation. She disappeared before trial, but they froze her accounts and dissolved the entire HOA board. When the dust finally settled, the lake was quiet again. I got my boat back, a little scratched, but still floating. I sat out there one evening, the sun bleeding orange across the water, and felt that peace I'd come here for in the first place. No crowds, no banners, no lies, just ripples, cicadas, and the echo of my granddad's voice in the wind. Sometimes I think about how close I came to giving up, to letting people like Karen win. But then I remember what this fight was really about. It wasn't just property. It was truth, heritage, and the simple right to stand your ground when the world tries to buy you out. A lesson? Sometimes defending what's yours isn't about pride. It's about reminding people that integrity still has boundaries, and some lines can't be crossed.